Hi and welcome back to Lisa's Stamp Studio. I'm Lisa Curcio. Christmas reminds me of white snow and white trees. That leads me into the beautiful Snow is Glistening stamp set. This is a promotional item for November 2018 and the product is only available while supplies last through the 30th of November. Here's the card we're going to be creating today, reminiscent with the beautiful white on white tones. There's some details in here that you're not catching from far away, but I'll show them to you in a close-up here as we move over to the stamp table. Remember, you're going to find a link in the description of this video below if you're here from YouTube, and there you'll find the pictures, cutting dimensions, and supplies that I've used. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started. Here's a close-up of the card we're going to be making today. Do you see it? Do you see how I have scored lines here connecting the top of the card layer to those snowflakes? And those snowflakes are made out of velvet white paper. Absolutely beautiful. I wish you could touch it, but you can. You can order your own. More details are over in the link description below. I'm going to be using the Snowfall Thinlits. This is all part of a promotional product for November. It's all part of the Snowflake showcase. These products are only available till November 30th or while supplies last, so you're going to want to get your hands on them. This is such a large die set. Let me show you. There's actually 2 sheets of dies in this package, making all kinds of beautiful snowflakes. The great thing about this is there's also stamp sets that coordinate. I have the Snow is Glistening stamp set here, which is obviously for Christmas and some beautiful winter cards. But there's also a non-Christmas stamp set. I've got pictures of that in the link below. These pieces are actually separate, and if you look at them closely, you can see that they look like flowers, which is going to give you a lot of use for this die set well after the holidays. We're going to be using 2 of these dies together today. So I'm going to take this larger one here and the smaller one that is here. I've got my Big Shot die cutting machine here, and I'm going to be using the magnetic platform. This is just my platform of choice when I'm using the metal framelits. It helps to hold them in place onto the paper. If you have the regular multi-purpose platform with the thin die adapter, that will work as well. You're going to want to put a clear mat on the bottom to protect that. And I've got a piece here of the white velveteen paper. Oh, it's so pretty. It's a compressed velvet, so you don't have to worry about it flaking and falling out. I've had no problems with it. But I'm going to give you a tip about die cutting. I am going to turn this face down onto my plates. And I'm going to grab my dies here, and I'm going to position them here on the back side. Now, there's a couple reasons why I did it upside down. First, I was able to see better that the die cut all the way through, which we'll talk about in just a minute. The second thing is I wanted to make sure that if I was using my Big Shot die brush or poking to get some of those pieces dislodged, that I wasn't damaging the velvet paper. We'll put another clear mat over the top and we'll go ahead and crank this through. Now, every Big Shot's a little bit different. The rollers that compress the cutting have different tension on each machine, so they're all individual. So you're going to want to do this check process with your own. So flip them over and take a look. You should be able to see that it's breaking away all the way around the die. And do you see how mine aren't? So I'm going to lay them back on top of that clear platform. And I've turned them just slightly, and I'm going to crank them back through. I know my Big Shot machine, it typically takes 2 cranks for mine, and you'll become familiar with yours over time. We have our snowflake here and another here. Now, I'm going to give you a tip that you're going to giggle about, but I'm going to tell you what, it works like a charm. Because of the velveteen paper, I find that they do want to stay intact with the die a little bit more than normal. I actually found this out by accident. I dropped it on the floor and it literally came apart, the die from the paper. I'm not saying that that's what you should do, but I will tell you what, if you've ever had an oops, you'll notice that that happens. I've whacked it right on the table. Look what happens. They've completely dislodged and almost all the pieces have come out. I'm going to use my Take Your Pick pickup tool, and I've got the paper piercing tip that's on this interchangeable end. And all I'm going to do is just give this a gentle poke, and you're going to be able to see that these pieces are all going to come out. This smaller one, we're going to do the exact same thing. But I noticed that because of the size of the die, it doesn't come as dislodged as easily when I bang it on the table. So this one, we're going to do some poking. So just come up behind it and poke on those negative areas to loosen up the paper that's inside the die. And remember, this is the back side, so we don't have to worry about damaging the velvet side. I'm going to switch out now the platform. So I'm going to take the magnetic platform out. I'm going to bring in the regular Big Shot platform. I cut a piece of Whisper White cardstock and I'm going to use the subtle embossing folder. And I realize this is going to be difficult to see because it truly is a subtle pattern. So I'm going to line it up here in the folder. I'm going to place it on top of that Big Shot platform. There is no clear cutting mat required for the bottom because you can see the density of this folder. This is going to leave a beautiful dynamic impression in your cardstock. But we do want to put a clear mat over the top, and then we'll go ahead and crank this through. Since we're not die cutting, just one pass is all that's required. And then you'll be able to see here that beautiful impression on that paper. Here's our 2 snowflakes. And right before you joined me for the video, I die cut an additional one so that we'd have a total of 3 for our card. This is the piece that we have already embossed. We're going to create some score lines to connect those hanging snowflakes. And to do that, I'm using my Stampin' Up! Paper trimmer. There's a dark blade and there's a light blade. The light blade is for scoring and the dark blade is for cutting. The great thing about the Stampin' Up! Trimmer is you're able to navigate these blades out of the way so they're not inside the perimeter of the cutting or the scoring area. With my embossed paper, with the embossed side up, I'm going to hold the larger snowflake over the top to get an idea of where I want it to land. Now, no 2 cards are going to be exactly the same because you're going to score them individually. But I can see that my score line is going to come around here. So I'm going to flip this over and kind of just get an idea where the positioning is with my finger. I'm going to lay this inside the cutting track here, which was going to be scoring in this case because we're going to use the light blade. I'm lining up the paper against the top to make sure that it's even. I'm going to navigate it to about where I thought it was, and then all I'm going to do is slide the blade down to the area that I want the score line to be. So on this side, you're going to see that it's raised. So that's going to be for our large snowflake. If you score longer than what you need, don't worry, that's going to be hidden underneath the snowflake itself. And now what I want to do is I want to make sure I've got room here to put my other snowflake. So I know I have an area between here I want to score as well. So I'm going to line that up here on the trimmer again, but using the score blade. I'm going to come down a shorter distance. So you can see we've gone down to here before. Let's go a little bit shorter and come down, maybe about halfway. And I'll go back up so I get a nice impression. So we've got our second line. My third line I want even shorter yet, but I'm going to leave a little bit of room and I'm going to move over. So we've got the first one, second one, and I'm going to move over a little bit more and I'll put that one here, making sure the paper is aligned at the top, and then I'll score just a short distance on this one. So now we have our 3 lines. This is the front where we've got the score lines, and here I've got a base of Whisper White cardstock. I've scored it in half just ahead of time. I'm going to go ahead and fold that, and I'm a big fan of my bone folder for that nice crisp edge on my cards. And then this is actually going to get mounted here once we're finished. My next step is going to be attaching my snowflakes. You can use the multi-purpose adhesive sheets, but I found that the liquid glue was just as easy and definitely a little bit more economical if you're going to be making a lot of these cards for the holidays. So this is the velveteen side. I'm going to flip it over, and I've got all 3 of mine here, making sure that I've got the right pretty side down. And I'm using the liquid glue. One thing about the liquid glue I'm going to recommend is that you get it started here on your silicone craft sheet. The great thing about the silicone craft sheet is that adhesive or glue or even hot glue will not stick to it. Once it's dry, you can simply just rub it right off, which makes this the perfect work surface for when you're working with glues or adhesives, simply because it won't mar the work surface underneath. All I'm going to do is add small dots of glue. I'm going to work with my larger snowflake first. Once I have my glue on, I'm going to go ahead and just use that pickup tool to help me lift it. I'm going to slide that over, and I'm going to work here with my longest strand. And I like my points to go up and down. So I'll just see where I want that, and then I'll tack that in place. Once I tack it down, I like to rub from the back just to make sure there's good adhesion. Let's go on and move on to the smaller snowflakes. I'm going to use my pickup tool to help me lift it. Slide that out of the way, and I'll come back over here. And this time I'm going to add my smaller snowflake on this strand. And again, remember, if the line falls behind it, it's not going to be noticeable when we're done. And then I'll rub from the back. And then we'll repeat that same process now with our last one. We've got our card base here. I'm going to use dimensionals around the back side of my card, but I want to give you a tip about your dimensionals. I am actually going to cut the frame around the dimensionals where it's not die cut. So let me show you. I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to take off just the frame. Typically what happens is when all the die cut dimensionals are gone, I take my scissors and I cut up these edges for smaller pieces. But let me show you how great these are going to be for a card like this. So I've got that frame, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that here on my card. So I'm going to work near the edge. I want to make sure they're not going to show from the outside edge. And then I'm going to work them all the way up. This is just a great way to use those outside edges. So I'm going to do the same thing now with this end. But we can fill in the rest with regular dimensionals. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of those. And I've got one here. And then one near here. Foam adhesive strips are another product that you can use. They are already cut into strips for you. They're a little denser than the dimensionals, so it depends on how much lift that you want, but this is definitely another option. Here in the center, I want to make sure that my card is not going to sag, so I'm going to place a couple more here just to make sure that this is balanced. I'm going to be mailing this Christmas card, so I want to be sure that it looks just like this on the other end. There's nothing worse than having a card come out looking a little distorted after you've put it together. And then we're going to remove the paper backing from these edges as well. Here's our card base, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to tack this down. I'm looking to leave a little bit of border around the top and the sides, and we'll tack that in place. And to finish it off, let's give it some pearls. Again, with my pickup tool, I'm going to use the largest pearls that are here. I'm going to place one inside the center of each of those velveteen snowflakes. I'm going to stamp the inside, and I'm using that coordinating stamp set, Snow is Glistening. The greetings in here are beautiful, and I love the font. I'm going to go ahead and use the basic gray to stamp the inside. Typically, I like to use the same color ink on the inside that I've used on the outside, but we've kept the outside of the card so clean. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open that up. If you want, make sure you press it all the way back so it's good and flat. We'll go ahead and tap up this greeting, and we'll stamp that here near the top. It reads, sending a blizzard of wishes for a wonderful season. Here's the card we created together today, and here's the one I created before you joined me. They're similar but not identical, and that's because the score lines and the positioning of your snowflakes are going to be different and unique for everyone that you create them for. Remember that the Snowfall Thinlits and the Snow is Glistening stamp set, along with other coordinating products like the velveteen paper, the snowflake trinkets, and an additional stamp set that can be used after the holiday, are all available in November or only while supplies last. And I have an added bonus for you. I will send you a free tutorial with 9 additional project ideas that you haven't already seen. It is completely free as my thank you for your purchase. If you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you're interested in Stampin' Up! Supplies, I would be more than happy to send you a complimentary copy of the annual catalog and or the holiday catalog. Just leave me a comment below. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.